Hey, pretty good parents out there. This is Josh and Dan. Welcome back. We're going to debrief a little bit about our last one, share some highs and lows. And
What was our last one, Josh?
our last podcast was how to talk to your teen. Very broad subject, but lots of examples come to mind. So just maybe a quick check-in, like how did we do? Anything stand out for the last few weeks to share with the listener?
There's zero on my end because I have a tween. He'll be 13 next month. Yeah. Or no, I'm sorry, next week. So I have
setting the stage though.
Yeah.
You're laying the groundwork for what it's going to be.
Yeah. Do you have any good examples of
yeah, so one of the things that we talked about in the last podcast was just the importance of timing and being able to read your kid and knowing when they want to talk and when they don't want to talk. And the setting was I picked up my daughter after soccer practice. All smiles, got in the car, immediately transitioned, face like went sad.
How many seconds we talking? Like door shuts.
1 second.
One
like
second.
As soon as she sat down.
So smile outside the car.
Yeah. Get in the car. It's real time. And eyes welled up with tears and said something like, let's go, let's drive. Like the usual is like, how was your day? How was soccer? And it was, no, let's go. And so instantly I'm like, oh no, something happened. I would love to know what it is. I want to help. I'd like to figure this out. But the timing of it was clear. She wasn't ready to talk. And I did a couple of quick little check-ins and I was like, nope, leave it alone. Now, pros and cons, we have a half-hour drive home. And so I figured there's a good chance towards the end of this drive, she'll be ready to talk. And it was like 20 minutes in, we just listened to music, let it sit there. And then the question was your day difficult because of soccer or before soccer? And she said, because of soccer. I was like, oh, well, something probably happened with a teammate or the coach. And I didn't push hard, but I just kind of probed like, oh no, like what happened at soccer? And she ended up sharing a lot. By the time we got home, most of the story was out and we could move. We already moved to what's your plan with this? And I'll get to ask is, what do you think the best strategy is to address this? And she had some ideas. And then when I got to leave the car, go in the house, and I can't say like everything was all better. Well, actually it all was better. It wasn't all back to like the ideal level, but I didn't push. I could tell she was hurting and upset and needed to like be ready to talk and just give her that space. And then she did talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in this kind of is that theme of de-escalation a little bit and all those things. And to me, it's always just, do I have enough patience and timing, right? And it sounds like that was probably a little trial and patience for you.
Yeah, you feel the pressure to hold back
right.
The horses want to charge. Like, well, what's going on? Let's fix it.
I'm thinking of Braveheart where they're like, hold. Yes. Hold.
They want to raise the spears and engulf the guy's head. Yeah. But they held strategically.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Hold off the temptation to jump in and wait till the green light's fully lit.
Yeah.
Versus charging.
And I think there's probably just with life and how hectic and people get busy and stuff, there's probably that temptation. It's like, oh, well, I only got so much time.
Yeah.
But maybe you're not going to get the time.
Yeah. So that was a small victory of how to do that well.
Yeah. Awesome. So today, I believe, are we talking about bullying?
Oof. Yeah. Big B word.
Yeah. B word.
But in most of our podcasts are going to take a fairly unique angle. So it's not like, what does bullying do? And it's not about what does bullying do. It's about as a parent, how best to equip your kid in real life. And I say real life, like playground, not in the classroom. Like the classroom's like, oh, you tell the teacher. In the playground of life, figuratively and literally, it's a little different. And so there's an encounter that my son had this week. And it's how to help him succeed in a long-term way versus kind of give the stereotypical answer of like, oh, you tell a teacher, you tell a parent. And I don't think that works very often. Like there are certain settings where that's absolutely the best. But what I'm more interested in today is exploring like how you best set your kid up to be able to navigate their own situations and knowing the difference between when to step in and when to let them handle it.
Yeah. Um, I feel guilty. I don't know how this came into our mind, but we were in the car and something came up about, I was talking with the boys, and it said something about snitches get stitches. And Carly, our 7-year-old, jumped on it, and she was just like the whole time in the car going, "Snitches get stitches." The whole right, and we're dying laughing, right?
Yeah.
But it makes me think of this, like in bullying days and growing up and stuff, there was something true to that thing about that fine line of, do you tell an adult, do you
Yeah.
tell a parent, do you tell something, versus, I don't know if we should be propagating snitches get stitches, but
Yeah.
there's something to that you kind of want to handle it, empower your kids, I would assume, to handle it in sort of a kid type way.
Absolutely. Well, and the teachers, and school administrators speak a lot, at least in our school district, a lot about bullying. And the pros and cons of that is it's great that there's light on it. It's great that there's in greater awareness. It's great that kids feel empowered that the school has their back. But they also give advice that is laughable sometimes, right? Like, and what I mean by that is they'll say or do something that the other kids just like, that's so dumb. What's wrong
Right.
with you? You're speaking like adults speak.
Mm-hmm.
Even more reason why we're going to bully you.
Right.
I mean, I feel like that's the way it was when we were kids. And that's kind of the target on your back of bullying. It was like, you say dumb things, you're going to bring on like more bullying.
Right.
And so there's this catch-22 of like, when do you step in and tell a teacher or a counselor or a parent? And when do you empower your kid? And I think, hopefully all the advice that we talk about here has a huge disclaimer. Like, it always depends. Depends on the kid, the situation, your family, and the severity of all of it. We're going to speak in generalities today because that makes the most sense for our audience. But only you know exactly what's going on at your school and with your kid. And if it's dangerous, you absolutely take all precautions necessary. Dangerous, though, is subjective. And if like, well, it's not clear that your son or daughter is like actually physically in danger or is significantly emotionally harmed, then you move toward empowering. What did you do? What could you have done? What could you say? Let's role play. So they have actually the tool set they need to navigate on their own versus relying on the adults around them to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
That has a lifespan that ends usually after elementary school.
Yeah.
Like middle school, over the years of working with kids, I've heard often that support significantly drops off in middle school. Not because they don't care, but they don't have the time to intervene. And there's so much more time kids are off on their own that adults just can't get there and protect. And the kid has to learn those tools on their own. So my son's 5th grade, 11 years old. The school's very involved in managing, inappropriate behavior or bullying behavior, which very much appreciate. But it also doesn't give advice of an 11-year-old to say to another 11-year-old boy that's going to work.
Right.
So, for example, he encountered some bullying. It was more like roughhousing at one point. He said, "Hey, please stop." He didn't stop. "Hey, please stop. I need my physical boundaries." Okay.
Which is kind of big words for an 11-year-old.
Appropriate,
Yeah.
fantastic communication, very accurate, but immediately laughable to another 11-year-old, right? Like, personal boundaries, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right? So that didn't work. And then fast forward a week, there was some like verbal insults that were hurtful. And so the consideration is, how do we equip our son? Do we step in? What's the circumstance look like? What does intervention really look like? And if we don't, how do we equip him to handle himself better in that situation? So that's the podcast topic is.
Can I also say the other hidden comment in the parent's head is
like stitches?
Can I go kick this little kid's ass? Right?
Yeah.
It's just, I'm sure that's just that innate thing. You just get so frustrated. You're like, ah.
Well, I mean, I told my kids early on, the goal is to avoid violence.
Obviously.
Yeah. But if someone hits you, you hit them back. And here's the advice.
I've told the same thing to my boys. Libby hates it, but I'm like,
it doesn't work to get hit. And to run or to hide, you're going to continue to get hit. And this is the therapist's perspective that sees the outcome of all of this, right?
Yeah.
I've seen the kid who gets hit and doesn't stand up. It doesn't work very well. Now, I'm not suggesting your kid's going to have ultimate redemption by swinging back. He might get his ass kicked. But fighting back feels better than running and tucking and running and hiding. And so this is not go start fights, but if someone
Right.
brings it to you, there's a lot of truth in saying you better learn how to fight back. Now, and that sounds old school because it is, but the thing is that a lot of the psychological world wants to talk a particular way, and that's not what happens on the playground. Kids don't say boundaries on the
Right.
playground. You get hit in the face, or they call you names, you cry, you throw something. Like, that's not how it should be, but that's how it goes.
Right.
So I think educating my son on boundaries and how to like use those words, but when to use the words and when not to, is super helpful, right? And for him to say those words that are 100% appropriate to his physical space and are great adult speak, it doesn't work to a not so smart fifth grader. Like, I'm like, you're talking too smart. You've got to dumb it down. They're dumber than you, buddy. Which in this case, that is true.
Yeah.
And it's like, you've got to use dumber words because it won't work to use these words. And
Yeah.
like, he's like confused, I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not your fault. This is just what's happening at this level. So let's go the why of all this. Well, you don't want your kid to be bullied ever. No one wants to be bullied because of the shame potential, the internalization of it. I am this. They say I'm this, so I must be this. The preoccupation and worry about bullying next. Like, there's all kinds of spin-offs like that are obvious from the horrible impact of bullying. And I'm 100% in support of administrators and counselors and parents paying more attention and intervening whenever possible. It just doesn't always mean it's going to work to the fullest extent. And it still might leave a gap where parents need to be able to help their kids fend for themselves in particular ways. That's the kind of the angle today. More or less, the school's doing a great job, at least in our district and my kids' school, paying attention and trying to stop this stuff. And it seems drastically different than when I was in elementary school. So I'm applauding that and in favor of that.
I would just say, like, on that note real quick, I've talked to my boys. They've never seen a fight, never been in a fight, never heard of a fight.
Which is incredible.
Incredible. When we grow up, third grade, some kid popped me in the nose. I look down, there's blood everywhere, and I go, "Oh, I guess we're fighting now, right?" That was the only fight I've been in, third grade. But, but I feel like all my friends, it was all the time. So just kids. So I love it that kids don't, but
Same.
I wonder if like there is a worse like I don't know, when you say like maybe like with social media, like there's another level of it, right?
Yeah, a different form of bullying that's certainly occurring. Yeah, I'm not. This isn't saying we're going in the wrong direction. I'd say we're going in a great direction. Let's keep doing that. There's just an and.
Right.
There's some gaps that parents can help fill with their kids that schools, counselors, teachers, administrators can't fill. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So the why is bullying's horrible. No one should be one. No one should be receiving it. But it happens, and we want to be able to talk about it with our kids. So I wanted to spend most of the time on the how. So parent to kid, and then parent to kid in terms of building out your kid's skill set or their toolkit of how to respond appropriately, or I say appropriately, effectively. Right, my son responded appropriately, but it wasn't effective.
Right.
So what we honed in on last night was what's effective in stopping, or at very least turning this in a different direction. It might take a few rounds, but you can't. It's just not going to work for him to just be the sitting duck.
Right.
That's just not going to be appropriate. And also want to talk about when to intervene and when not to intervene. So he's 11. This happened at a kid's house after school. I could easily talk to the parents, but I don't think that's actually helpful. I'm not convinced the parents are going to be able to do anything. I don't even know if they're going to be able to hear it. And I don't want this kid to have anything else on my son. Like, here's a report that you said this to so and so.
Right.
His parents told us, now we're mad at you. Here are your consequences. I don't see that very helpful. It could enrage the bully. I'm not saying don't do that, but I want, in this case, I calculated, I don't think that's the helpful road. What's helpful? Help my son develop his kind of repertoire of responses that we had to develop as boys. And I told him, I'm like, early on, you got to learn to shit talk.
Yeah.
If you're a boy and you don't want to get bullied, you've got to have good comebacks. You've got to be able to like verbally spar.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately, and hopefully it's changed some or a lot since we were kids, but man, in like middle school, high school, it was like jujitsu with words.
Yeah.
Like you have got to be limber and quick. Otherwise you just get stomped all over.
And I feel like that's
Even
how
by your friends.
that's how the funny kids became funny, because they knew they were going to get their ass kicked, and they're like, "I better be funny." Yep. It's like,
It's true. It's sad and unfortunate,
Yeah.
but it is kind of like the animal world that we're talking about.
right.
Not that we're wanting this to be the forever world, but they do live in this world from time to time. We want to make sure they have those skills. So, advice for your kid who's in a bullying situation: if you've done the calculations and you're discerning, this isn't a time to intervene with the school counselor or parent. You've decided you're going to go right to your kid. And in quick way, I determined that last night. This has been happening off and on for a while. My son has taken some steps, measures from time to time, got in trouble at school. I was okay with the trouble because I felt like he was standing up for himself. It's like, good job. School got mad, but this kid was egging you on and he wouldn't stop after you told him to stop. I think he did the right thing. Okay, could you have done this, this, this? We did that. But at the end, he took some measures and got in trouble for it. I didn't think last night that the solution was talking to this parent because I didn't trust this kid receiving parental advice based on the track record.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good opportunity for my son to up his game going to middle school next year. The verbal threats are going to increase, and I want him to feel like he's got some sort of defense. So we role played how to take a stand without needing to get physical. Like the wittier you are, the less likely it has to get physical,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not to sound stereotypical, but most adult bullies aren't the most intelligent. Okay, they're not really prepared for like witty language or comebacks. They're relying on their power and their intimidation or their brute force, and they are confused, can be confused with witty little stingers.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That like disarms their threat. You're like, I'm not really afraid of you. What are you going to hit me? Then the teacher's just going to come over and you're going to get in trouble. Like that doesn't make any sense. Well, yeah, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow me as I walk away. You are walking away, but you didn't lose.
Right.
Because you thwarted their agenda, right? And the more you do that, the less incentivized the bully is to do that. The more you don't talk and ignore it, which is some advice. Now, sometimes the best thing is to ignore because it's not repeating. It's this one-off time. You're at this place. Just ignore it because it was cleaner. Sure. But when it's a reoccurring relationship, it's in a classroom setting or at the recess, and you're seeing this kid often, ignoring usually eggs them on because it's a free target with no consequences. So I'm not a fan of ignoring.
Yeah.
It's advice that kids are getting sometimes, but it's not good for their ego. It's not good for their safety, and it continues to keep the door open for the bully. So I like the idea of taking a stand. Sometimes that's literal, sometimes it's figurative. Like it's not necessarily physically fighting. It's more of a psychological self-respect kind of stand. Like, I'm not going to let you do this because this isn't fair. This isn't right. This isn't cool. This sucks. I'm not going to let you do this.
Mm-hmm.
We have to maybe build our kids up in that situation through a lot of talk and role play for them to stand up in that space, but that's good parenting. So I like the advice for the kids. If you've determined intervention's not a good idea or not appropriate for the setting, take a stand, explore witty comebacks, like who's the kid, what'd they say, and let's explore kind of a smart ass comeback that isn't egging them on physically, but it shows that you're not just sitting there like a bump on a log, like ready to get hit. You're going to you can fire back, but not necessarily provoking physical. The wittier it is, the harder it is for them to get physical because they're confused.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, what? You're supposed to be afraid of me.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to be like deer in the headlights right now. And you fired this back and I'm feeling off. I'm feeling dumb now.
What if you just say, ask the kid to unpack it? Be like, oh, you're going to kick my ass? Let's unpack that. How are you going to kick my ass? You're going to punch me in the face? What are you going to do?
Yeah, well, that's the key is the sarcasm.
Yeah.
If you said, let's unpack that and you were dead serious, he'd be like, I'll unpack your shit right now.
Right.
But if it's wittier and disarming, that works, right? Like, you're going to kick my ass. Like, what is that? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? And how's it going to work? You're going to get like a few shots and the teachers run in and then you're going to go to the principal's office? That's what you want to do? That shows power of wit and confidence, even if the kid doesn't have physical power, right? And the real ego is what we're trying to address here. It's not the body. It's how they feel about themselves. And to even get hit, but not to feel like you got beat up is possible. You're building this like stronger spirit of like, you're bigger and better and more important than how you show up in this space. They don't get to take that from you. And that's what the long game is building a sense of self-acceptance and self-love and self-respect. It's not even that contingent upon how it went in the playground. You're like, you're going to say your dumb stuff and your little buddies are going to laugh, but you guys are sad. Like, you're not my life. I don't need you to like me. That's really what we want for our kids, to be that impervious, that immune to bullshit kind of like bullying. But that takes some time to develop. And I know typically the kids that are getting bullying have the lower self-esteem. And so it's even, a bigger swing to get them to a place of self-confidence and self-acceptance. But there's time, especially if it's like elementary and middle school, like there's got to be time. Like, they're not out yet. This is the time to help build that inside of them. So going through some of these examples, give them a sense of confidence, like they have a game plan. You role play a few that comment,
yeah. So that,
right? You be the bully, say what the bully says and do what the bully does. Then I will be you, and we'll see how this feels. And we did that last night.
You want to do it right now?
You want to be the bully?
Hey, Josh, give me your lunch money.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you not have lunch, Dan?
I'll eat your lunch.
Hey, I got a great idea. I know the school has like free lunches. Do you want to walk over together and we'll get you a free lunch?
I don't know what to say now.
Yeah, you're dumb.
Yeah, you're dumb. I don't know.
If I don't feel like I'm a victim to you before you start speaking, I can't really lose. I mean, I'm almost a 50-year-old man. We're talking about 10-year-old kids.
Right.
Very different, I know. But to help our kids try that on and say those words, it's okay for them to play a role. Like, what does a smart, confident, witty kid say to the idiot bully? Play that role. Here's your character in this play. Give them like a persona to step into. That's all the bully's doing, right? So like, well, let's find a stronger character for you to play. What would you like to say? Okay, well, will that work? Maybe, maybe not. Witty or funny, disarming because it's intellectual, but not too intellectual. Like, you don't want to use words that the bully's going to then just use against you again.
Right.
Like my son said, please respect my boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Why are you talking like a robot?
Right.
And they dug in deeper, right? And I'm like, no, you can't say that. It's accurate, buddy. Those are good words for adults.
Yeah.
But kids it's not effective. It's appropriate, but not effective. What's effective? Something that gets the dumb kid's attention. This isn't working on me. Like, you're kind of pathetic. This is what you need to do to get your friends to laugh. Okay, well, I guess keep going. I don't find it that interesting, but I'm going to walk away. I'd rather go hang out with someone else. Smart. You got to outsmart the bully. That's the key. Is outsmart him in a point without without full on disrespecting them, because that sparks
Right.
the response. You want to de-escalate it, and outsmarting them usually works. And even if it doesn't, continually outsmarting them will. They're just going to be like, this is too much work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have the patience to bully this kid anymore. He's
Yeah.
moving around too much.
Well, I love the idea of doing the role play. I mean, I just think, practice makes perfect with anything. And if you've never, it'd be really hard to think on your feet that quick.
I know. My son,
Yeah.
Isaiah, said last night, the school talks about bullying all the time, and they tell us that we shouldn't have to take it, but they don't tell us how to do anything about it. They just tell us to come find them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole point. There's a gap. The school should be good at protecting, but they can't intervene in all areas, and they can't teach the kids always how to like show up in that real space and not use adult speak that gets thrown back at them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the parent opportunity. Like, all right, let's role play. You already told a teacher, you told them weeks ago, it's happening again. It didn't work last time. Let's try it on your own.
Yeah.
What do you want to say? And what would they say? Okay, would that work? And sometimes it's just trial and error, right? Like I said it, and then they still hit me in the face. Like, all right, well, let's try again.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're tough, and I'm proud of you. You're fighting the good fight here. Obviously, if it got physical, it probably does get reported. The school probably does intervene. The bully still might be the bully, though, right? And maybe we're talking about like old school bullies, and maybe kids get too distracted now with all the ADHD and all the electronics in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they move on quicker or something. But when I was a kid, like bullying could last like months, day after day. There just wasn't a lot going on. And a kid could really just put a target on you and like stay there for a while unless you did something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's like that anymore, but I want to make sure, my kids have tools and confidence to not be a prisoner to someone else's dumb behavior.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've heard in middle school is that I was talking to, I think, the assistant principal at the school that my son goes to, and he said there hasn't been a fight in over 4 years.
That's amazing.
And 1,100 kids. I was
So-
like, what? And so, but he did say it was way
Right.
more. And maybe
Cyberbullying.
we keep this for exactly. We keep this for a different podcast, but more that cyberbullying type stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Advice for parenting. The first thing you want to touch on is make sure your kid's not harboring the shame or the hurt from the words,
Mm-hmm.
because these words they were real words, but they're not probably accurate to who they are as a person. And it'd be really unfair and unhealthy for them to hold on to them. So talking about what it looks like to release those words. Do you need to talk more about it? Do we need to acknowledge like you're not these things that this kid says, and then we replace it with things that you are? So increasing affirmations, increasing reassurance. Like, here's how I see you. This is how I've seen you in school. This is what your other friends have said. This is what your teachers say. This kid's words don't seem to be very relevant. Like, they obviously don't know you very well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably not about you. It's probably about them. Like, which is always, usually true. Not really about the bullied kid, right?
Yeah. I mean, I always felt more compassion for the bully than the kid that's being bullied, right? Because it's usually they have a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
To be doing that, right?
Making sure that that your kids don't internalize the messiness of all of that.
Yeah.
This isn't your fault. This is not accurate. He's saying these things, or she's saying these things, and it sounds like it's defining you, but that's not you. This is how we see you. This is how I know you. What else do you know about yourself that's, counter to what this kid's saying? That's kind of the internal defense mechanism, is making sure this stuff doesn't stick and define them.
Mm-hmm.
For it to go unaddressed or for it to be unreleased year after year, it does start to create that identity and shame, and they do start to see themselves that way. Not that it's not fixable at some point in life, it's not a lifelong thing, but that's the concern, is they start to internalize this messaging and start to become that person.
Yeah. Well, something that just popped into my head was I was doing a Sam Harris mindfulness deal, or maybe like one of those reflections, and he was talking about psychological immune system, right? And I just thought about that, right? So during the flu season, people might get flu shots, or you try to get a lot of eat healthy and have a good immune system, right? To balance us. And he was talking about that psychological immune system and just using mindfulness to do that, right? So I'm just thinking in those affirmations with your kid, teaching them to think that these are just thoughts. They're somebody else's thoughts. They aren't reality. They aren't true. And being able to build up that psychological immune system
Yeah.
that can basically they'll need for the rest of their life, right?
I mean, think about as adults how healthy we'd be if we had that.
Yeah.
If we weren't really being affected by everyone's words, or even worse, what we think their words would be. They didn't even say it. That's most of our suffering.
Mm-hmm.
As early as possible with your kids, bringing awareness to that concept of mindfulness and releasing often, like those are just words. Like, so what? You don't get to define me. Like, how do you get to define me as a person? That doesn't even make any sense. You said these things about me, and then these kids laugh. The part to where it's sticky is if we think about those things about ourselves. These are in our insecurities, and this person is putting them under a microscope and making fun of them. That hurts. But same thing though. It's, well, do I need to think those things about myself? Is that actually necessary and helpful? Well, of course not. But if we're not taught to do it differently, if we're not taught to not do that, we will develop those insecurities. And then a bully has an easy target to hit those insecurities and hurt us more. But as early as possible, talking about mindfulness, releasing, not getting wrapped up and attached to all the thoughts and all the words and all the feelings, because we suffer the more we do that, especially like a bully or what we think someone might be thinking. We graduate from a bully did say this. And then as adults, we think people are saying this about us. And we're miserable and hurt and feel horrible, but it was all projection and it was imagination. Like they didn't even say that. Well, I felt like they were. What do you mean you felt like they were? Like they didn't say it? No. Then why are you ruminating on it?
Right.
And even if they did say it, like, why are you
Who cares?
ruminating on it?
Yeah.
You're alive and this life is happening all around you. This is what you want to do with your time.
You're on a rock floating in space.
Exactly. Are you not in awe of gravity and the sun and your heart working?
Yeah.
And I do that with my kids, maybe to the point where they laugh internally, but I'm like, hey, I just want you to know today's school and you got this and that, but we're humans here on this little rock for a little bit of time. We're not even quite sure why we're here. And we're in this endless universe and it's amazing. Don't get confused about your existence like it's about school or your soccer score or your friends, because those things are like a blink of an eye of our existence. And they're probably like, shut up, Dad. Like, school is my real thing.
You don't even know.
You don't know how important my lunch is today. Yeah, we do know. Because we get trapped in the same reality of like, no, but my work's serious. And like this, it's Friday and I got these things. Like, oh, really? The universe really cares about your Friday? No, the universe doesn't care about you at all.
Mm-hmm.
You're just here. What do you want to do with it? So that's like the mindful Kung Fu response to bullying is these are concepts and words that you do not want to internalize because they're silly. They don't even have to be toxic. Toxic insinuates there's something else behind them. We're dismantling the concept because it's like, you, moron or other human, you get to define me? No. No one gets to define me. Like that doesn't even happen unless I give you that power.
Yeah.
Like we give the bully, we give society, we give the event the power to define us, and then we suffer. You can't suffer even if you're getting hit or called names. You can't if you don't attach meaning to it. I know that's a whole nother level of anti-bullying behavior, but it's way better. It's the best. Like, how do you suffer from people's dumb remarks if you don't give it any credibility?
Mm-hmm.
You can't. You're like, oh, well, you don't know anything. You don't know me. You don't get to define me. So you can say whatever you want. It's kind of silly. And then the bully will probably run out of steam because it's like, oh, I'm not getting the impact I want. I'm not getting my power that I'm looking for in this situation. You're not giving it to me.
Did you ever see that movie, Roxanne?
Yes.
Remember with Steve Martin? He had the big nose,
Yeah.
right? And he's doing the dart competition.
Yes.
And I don't that we grew up with that movie. My brother loved that scene. And the guy calls him Big Nose, right? He's like, "Hey, Big Nose," or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he takes the dart and he throws it on he goes, "Throw a dart, whatever number you hit, I'll come up with 20 better comebacks than that," right?
Yeah.
And so he throws a 20 and then he sits there and rattles off 20 better comebacks than "Hey, Big Nose," right?
Yes.
And I just thought that to me was it. Like we were talking about, so disarming,
Yeah.
kind of beating the bully at his own tricks, right?
Yeah.
And just be like, "Oh, that's a great one. Let me think of a better one. Here's a better one. You could say this, right? You could say
Yeah.
that, right?"
Yeah. Do you remember the R-rated version of Eminem, 8 Mile? Did you see 8 Mile with
Wait,
Eminem?
there was one that wasn't R-rated and one that was
No. The movie 8 Mile
yeah,
is just like, well, it's rated R, so it's
yeah,
he in his final battle
right.
rips himself apart and took the guy
Before the other guy
yeah,
could, right?
left the guy nothing, right?
Yeah.
Literally speechless on stage
Right.
because he went ahead and addressed all his stuff, all of his insecurities and put them out there.
Yeah.
And then the guy had nothing. And ironically, Eminem looks powerful and victorious in highlighting all of his weaknesses because he owned them and he wasn't affected or defined by them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he goes to bed at night and in peace and has no insecurities, but on stage, he owned it and he took that guy's power away. This is the same thing. We're taking the bully's power away by saying, like, you don't get to, like, you don't define me.
Mm-hmm.
You might be bigger. You might say this dumb thing that everyone's laughed, but if I don't give you my power or my identity, like, you can't really win. I can't really lose.
Yeah.
There's no winning or losing. We're just being. I know 11-year-olds not going to fully grasp that, but don't wait to teach those things. Like, don't wait till they've already developed this concept that then they're kind of a captive, they're a prisoner to. Teach them early. These are just words people just say. Like, they can't define you. That's silly.
Yeah.
Make sure you're not even trying to define yourself because that's also can be silly. Breathe, be grateful, be present. You'll have peace, even if people around you suck.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome, Josh.
Yeah,
there we go.
Let's recap. Like,
Yeah,
hit someone if they hit you. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're not
fully
advocating violence, but I'll just be transparent. I have told my boys that last resort, if it comes down to it, and
Absolutely.
I'm like, that's going to be a decision you're gonna have to make in your life,
Yeah.
and be ready for it. But obviously, I think
take all the appropriate
steps. Absolutely last resort that would be here. But I love these about talking about, just disarming with Huber, standing up for yourself, right? Without
not necessarily
have to be
physical.
physically, right?
Yeah.
It can just be mentally. Try to like be smarter out
verbally.
Verbal. Yeah.
Most kids that are bullying are usually smart because they're different. Not always, but use that as a strength of wit and charm and intelligence to like outsmart, generally speaking, the dumber bully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then you also touched on, parents, when you have these conversations about what is appropriate versus what is effective, right? Maybe what they've heard at school, what might be more effective, and then helping them role play that, right?
Yeah.
Kind of practice makes perfect.
And we're not saying don't intervene, but evaluate whether intervention actually will help. If it will help, obviously do whatever you can do to help your kid, but sometimes the intervention makes it worse. So just be wise in how you intervene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I think we also talked about just making sure that they don't harbor any of that shamefulness, right? So validate them as a person, how you see them. And then if you want to use some mindfulness, tricks of, we're on this big rock and what does it really matter?
Yeah.
Stuff like that, right?
Use the rock.
Yeah.
You could also share your own personal experiences of what it looks like for you to release disparaging words. It still happens in life, right? It doesn't go away when we're out of middle school or high school.
Mm-hmm.
Or share stories from your time of what people said and did and what was it like for you to like release those.
Mm-hmm.
It's very comforting to know they're not alone in that, because when you're being bullied, it feels like you're all alone. It's a bigger group of kids or one kid singling you out. To hear from their parent that they've been in a situation like that before, oh, good, I'm not the only one. And oh, good, I'm going to be able to get through this. So it's a great opportunity to disclose some of your own experiences and how you got through it.
Or if you want to name drop one of your friends, like Eminem. Oh, my friend Eminem did this. He had this great
My
thing.
boy went through some of the same things. I mean, I totally get it.
So we did name drop Eminem and Steve Martin. So
Yeah.
no big deal, guys. NBD.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thanks, pretty good parents, for tuning in. Again, if you found this episode helpful, please, like it. And if you know of anybody that's going through bullying issues, please share it. And let's all help make this pretty good parent a better community for us all to learn from.
Yeah.
So,
love it. Thanks for being here, guys. Hopefully it's helpful.
Yep. All right. We'll see you on the next one.